Hey, peace, y'all. Welcome to the Work-Based Learning Week 5. We are going to be talking about decision-making and values today. Our intention is to support you all to understand different approaches to cooperative decision-making, like understanding how vision sets the stage for the business, how mission lays out the plan, and how values determine how we do what we said we will do. We'll be starting all the way at the top with decision-making and going through a couple of examples today. So yeah, like this is kind of like really the foundation for co-ops. Like we all need to like have a good understanding about how we're making decisions together or like what the threshold is. Otherwise it can get kind of messy. So today gonna be going through this website called the Decider app, which gives some pretty good like insights into what the different decision-making models mean and how they work. But before we get into that, Tut, anything you want to say to open up the space?
Yeah, just grand rising. Welcome to week 5. Please, if any assignments are, if you're behind on any assignments, try to focus on this week's assignments, and then we'll use Friday as time to catch up. And if you need some assistance, you can set up some time with myself or Brother Greg, and we'll catch you up. But welcome to week 5, and let's get into it, y'all.
Bless. So the first thing we'll do today, this will be prompt number 1 for 17. We need you all to do your time cards again today. And so it'll be the same process as last time. There's a link on here that you can click to get to the time card. I've told you all what the dates are, July 26th through August 8th. So when you get into the time card portal, put in your email, your name, July 26th here for when it starts, August 8th for when it ends, how many hours you worked over that 2 weeks, and then a brief description of what you did. Hit submit, and we'll get it sent over, so you'll get your stuff on Friday. That is number 1, time card. That is prompt number 1. Please do that today, because if you all do it late, it kind of gums up everything. Okay, so yeah, that was prompt number 1, time cards, and now let's get into the meat of today. So when we're making decisions, I think we all kind of are aware of the default democratic decision-making majority rules. So this is where we'll be like starting off in this kind of like primer about different decision-making types. This website, the Decider app, the decider.app is what we're using. So you all can go through this yourselves as well. It starts off with a little bit of an overview. You can see that it's saying like, this is a pretty fast decision-making type compared to others. Pretty collaborative, pretty egalitarian, and pretty transparent. And so, the overview of majority rules, decision-making is when a leader gives up authority over a decision and presents a series of options to the full group to vote on. The option accepted by the majority of the group is then enacted. The democratic decision or rule of majority is usually traced to ancient Greek, whatever that was before then. So some of the pros of democratic decision-making, it's often a very transparent process. It's, everyone believes that it's fair, and it's easy to grasp. Like, we're all kind of used to it. That's how our politics work, right? So we're all kind of understanding, like generally winner take all, 51% or more. Some of the cons can be vulnerable to groupthink or just campaigning. A majority can feel like a compromise, especially when there's like 49% of people that don't like an idea and then 51% of people that do. That's basically half that like and don't like, right? And we've kind of seen what that looks like in our country. Has a, for each decision-making type is going to tell you like a process about how that happens and some common traps to avoid. One of the ones that I want to highlight is like tyranny of the majority, where there can be groupthink or there's a good chance that what they call low-powered constituents or diverse viewpoints are repeatedly overruled because, you know, there's a majority of, like, let's say 51% or more. And yeah, I don't know. I often like try and think through like how these things are playing out in real life and what it would look like in an organization if we were to do these kinds of, if we were to use like, you know, either of the processes that I'm talking about today. And so I think it's fair to assume that, you know, some of the problems we're dealing with as a country right now, because we're in this democratic 51% winner take all type thing, may transfer over to your cooperative if, you know, you decide to use this as your process. The next one that we're going to go over before talking about questions is consensus decision making. And this is like all the way to the other side of the spectrum from democratic decision making. It can take time, but it allows for the insight of a lot of people to be integrated. And so in the overview section, it's talking about how this can be a pretty slow process because everyone has to agree, right? But it's very collaborative, very egalitarian. It's getting everyone's views. It's very transparent because, you know, like you got to give the info so people can vote, otherwise you won't get the vote. And so it's talking about here, you know, everyone must agree. And so consensus decision-making asks everyone in the group to shape the decision until a compromise is reached that reasonably satisfies everyone. Unlike some other decision-making models, consensus strives to incorporate everyone's perspectives, needs, and ultimately their permission. Has a long history in tight-knit communities like faith groups, neighborhoods, and unions. So some of the pros of this process: everyone's satisfied, fosters strong unity. It's very equal and distributes the power. Yeah, after that decision is made, like pretty much everything has been talked about, so folks are just ready to go. Some of the cons that they list, it might feel like it takes forever trying to get everyone to say yes to something. If you don't have trust in your group or there's competing interests, it's going to be very, very difficult because, you know, people are already stuck in their ways and trying to get something moved. As the group grows larger, it gets more difficult because there's more voices to account for. And there might be compromises that don't necessarily serve the group, but it is something that everyone can, like, you know, meet in the middle about. And you'll find some of the common traps, as well as alternatives at the bottom. One of those alternatives is consent decision-making. And this is kind of like in the middle between majority and consensus. And so rather than majority rules or everyone agrees, this one is primarily about no one is objecting. And so because there's it's looking for an absence of objections, it's going to be inviting group participation like consensus. But everyone is trying to answer the question for themselves: is this a good enough solution? At the Law Center, Sustainable Economies Law Center, where I work, we also use this consent-based decision-making process. And what we say is, like, is this good enough to try? Consent originated from the Quakers, which are like a pacifist religious group. It's been adopted by the sociocratic movement, which is a way that folks like organize and do work together inside of cooperatives. And yeah, like if you look at the overview, it can be pretty fast, pretty collaborative and egalitarian, but very transparent. And it's something that, you know, a lot of folks are starting to gravitate to. The pros: fast, encourages iteration, because we're just looking for good enough solutions and not like the perfect end all be all solution. So yeah, there's iteration there. Doesn't require like complete agreement to keep moving forward, but it promotes, you know, like folks talking it through and making sure that this is the best thing for the org. Some of the cons: if you're not careful, you can get rushed towards a solution that's not the best. When you're just getting into it, it can feel like unfamiliar and uncomfortable. Want to make sure you don't ignore team cohesion, because yeah, the things do have long-lasting impact. This has one of the longer processes in here in terms of how to like go about using this. And there are some common traps at the bottom, which we can talk about. But I'll let you all know what the prompts are for this week to wrap it up, and then we can like have a little bit of a Q&A or talk about if you guys have any questions or comments about these things. We're curious if you have any stuff you want to bring in. But the first prompt for today, number 17, is complete the time card. I'll be sending it to you. It's from July 26th through August 8th. The second prompt, give 2 pros and 2 cons of democratic decision-making. Third prompt, give 2 pros, 2 cons of consensus decision-making. And so you'll be able to go into these web pages when we send them out, or you can just go to the decider.app. Anything you want to bring in?
No, just the consensus, the cooperation that it takes to come to a conclusion, but it just takes so much time. And just to practice consensus, it gives you a good idea of like what type of processes you'll have to go through to like really deal with some real issues in a cooperative. Democratic, but once again, it's also it's up to the group. You guys might decide, our gals might decide democratic, but from my work and the cooperatives that I've worked with, even if they've chosen to go the democratic route, most of the time it ends in consensus because issues are consistently brought up. Want to make sure everybody's valued, and it's just very cooperative, but it takes so much time, and that's just realistically, some issues just take time. And being in the position of leadership, of management, of ownership, understanding that in the forefront, will alleviate any type of frustrations or irritations when you might come across problems that you really have to sit with your cooperative. And it's a few cooperatives that's been sitting with a few problems for a while. So just being realistically, if you can try that out in your own space, it's just a nice thing to observe and be a part of. But yeah, I just wanted to share that from my experience working with cooperatives.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. So we can open it up for questions now. If there's anything y'all are hoping to get some more clarity on.
Can you repeat prompt 2, please?
Yeah, definitely. Prompt 2 is giving 2 pros and 2 cons of democratic decision-making, as expressed in this decider app. And then prompt number 3 is doing the same thing for consensus, 2 pros, 2 cons.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to express that it's okay for a cooperative to choose different decision-making models for different things. For instance, a co-op may require consensus to dissolve the company and wind it up, close it down, but may only require majority to send out a social media post. Or maybe the co-op requires consent to start a new project, or I don't know, I'm just throwing out examples, but I'm just trying to let you know that you don't have to necessarily apply one cookie cutter solution to everything. And you can like plan for the different kinds of decisions and the different ways that like the work is done, and making sure that you have the right decision-making process in mind. In some cases, you all may decide through democratic decision-making or consensus or consent to delegate that power to someone so that they can just go and do it and check in with the group later. But as long as you all like have a firm collective understanding of like what that process is going to help with like conflict and tension down the line, because you won't be both like trying to advocate for yourself and your ideas while also trying to like, I guess, help the group figure out like how we're going to make this decision. Okay, any other questions, y'all, before we wrap up? I think I will say for the cooperative development folks, for today, after you do your like 30, 35 minutes of work, spend the next like 2 hours or so like going really in depth through this decider app and the decision-making processes, because as someone starting up a business or an organization from scratch, like this is like one of those cornerstones that you got to make sure it's clear, it's easy to follow, and yeah, it vibes with the kind of organization you want to run. Okay, so I'm assuming you all don't have questions, or we're still doing integrations from the Lionsgate. Either way, please do the time card. Give us the pros and cons for the decision-making stuff, and we will see you tomorrow, same time. Yeah, yep. It looks like Tut is frozen. So yeah, thanks, y'all. If there's no other questions, I'll see you at your check-ins or.
See y'all. Great week, everybody.
Bye, y'all.